Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Players NIL. And my special guest today is Mr. Charles McNealy. Charles, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I really appreciate it. And Charles, you and I met over Zoom a couple weeks ago, and I really loved your story. And here at the Players NIL, we're talking about, how can we use athletics to better our lives and better the lives of the people around us. And I think you're a great example of that, in my opinion, but I'd like you to share it with the audience. So let's go back to the beginning. And I do this on every podcast. I talk about two words. One is sports and one is athletics. To me, sports is the first game that you saw or your early fandom. You grew up in St. Louis. Maybe it was football, maybe it was baseball, basketball, maybe there's some other sport, but tell me about your early life. Someone took you to a game, someone watched TV with you, someone bought you a baseball mitt. How did you become aware that there was this thing called sports out there?
So my first probably sporting event that I can remember, my mom was in college. So I was like 3, about that age, maybe 4. And we used to go to the basketball games that they had at the University of Missouri-Rolla at the time. Now it's called Missouri S&T. And so from a young age, I got to see college sports. That's probably my earliest memory of sports. And then growing up for there, my grandpa used to take me to see baseball games. And little did I know that I was in one of the most iconic arenas ever, Busch Stadium 1. And so I got to see Busch Stadium 1 being there, and then look out of my seat and over to the left and see Busch Stadium 2 being built, and then now go to games at Busch Stadium 2. So
when you were young, 3 years old, 4 or 5, and all that, what did you think when you saw those athletes?
It was really cool to see. Like I remember wanting to do that, specifically football, before I figured out that height plays a really big factor in that. But before then, like when we were in Walmart, I used to like run, how they had the tags sticking out in the aisle. I used to run down them, hitting them with my hand, thinking I was hitting the hands of fans and things like that, wanting to be a professional athlete and throwing the ball down the hall and running and going to catch it like Mr. Perfect and things like that. So I always dreamt about wanting to do what they did. And, to a point I was able to accomplish that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think that's probably classic American, young boy gets exposed, living his dream of trying to be like his heroes on TV, or in your case, some of the games that you went to. I think that's pretty classic. So what was some of the early sports that you participated in?
So I never participated in baseball, which I wish I would have, but for sure football was, I think, the first sport. I played flag football. From there, I played a little bit of soccer, just a very tiny bit, probably like 2 or 3 years. And then basketball was the sport I played for about 3 or 4 years. Around the time that I was, I think, 6, maybe 7, I was introduced to wrestling in the middle of basketball season. So I stopped playing basketball. And from that day forward, I wrestled. And of course, did some other sports, track. And I played lacrosse for a year. And my dad and my grandpa are really big into golf. So I've had a pair of golf clubs ever since I could probably walk. So I've been fortunate enough to participate in a lot of different sports, but my bread and butter is definitely wrestling.
So write the scouting report for Charles McNealy, the athlete. What would it say in the scouting report?
And a charismatic, go-getter type of guy. I do overcommit myself sometimes, which that's my downfall. But, as long as you can start to recognize those things, then you can start to correct them. So, but I'm definitely a go-getter, really confident, charismatic, and I can probably speak to anybody about anything.
Love it. That's a great scouting report. It's one that coaches want to have on their team, someone just like you. So at some point you realize that, athletics now, right? Sports was the fandom. Now you're an athlete. Athletics in high school, you realize, hey, maybe I can use this as a ticket to get to college. Tell me about those steps in that moment where you said, I can wrestle in college.
So I remember going to camps. I was in 8th grade, 7th grade, I was being able to wrestle with the high school kids because, I had a brother in high school. He was really good. I had a brother that was a year older than me. He was also pretty good. We were going to these tournaments and these camps, and we were doing, pretty good as a family. So they invited the younger of us to be able to go and practice with the high schoolers. And so that's when I started to have the dream of being able to wrestle on the next level. So just at the high school level for me was a dream, getting on the bus, traveling to those tournaments, cutting weight in the hotel. Like I wanted to be able to do that. Then once I was exposed to college wrestling, I think when the national championships were in St. Louis, I think it was 2012, it had one of the best brackets ever. I think there was the 157-pound bracket. Of those, I think 60 or 50 something individuals who were in that bracket. I think there's like 5 or 6 world medals that turned out from that bracket. I think they had like 16 All-Americans between all of them, and it was a barn burner. But that's what really got me exposed to wrestling in college. Then I started to watch these videos when I got to be a senior in high school. One of my coaches was really, really good about showing us what the next level does and preparing us for that, taking us to camps. I was exposed to the Olympic Training Center and some of those guys up there. And then I started to see what I could really do. So I had the dream of, flying to wrestling tournaments. And instead of getting on that bus now, I've graduated to a plane and we're spending 3, 4, 5 days in a hotel and how to manage my weight. Like I wanted to be able to do that one day. I wanted to have that grind, wrestling 3, 4 times a week. Like those things I started to dream about. And we had a college coach that came to Waynesville before I was a senior. So he was the first person that kind of told me, like, you can actually wrestle at the next level, man. Like you should give it a shot. And so he ended up being my freshman year college wrestling coach.
Wow. So I never wrestled, but my father was a wrestling coach when I was young, and my job was to cut the oranges for the end of the bench. So that's as close as I got to that. But being an athlete and recognizing athletes as I did when I was young, and I idolized great athletes like you did, I always respected wrestlers, the tremendous work ethic, the discipline, the selflessness in terms of giving up everything for your team, cutting weight, all those things. What would you describe to me as the most essential strengths that it takes to be successful at wrestling?
Discipline's one. You learn it real quick when it comes to making weight. And then when you fail in wrestling, it's you got to let it go quicker than most people know, because your failure can come in a lot of things. It could be a tough day at practice, and you can have a tough day at football practice and get hit a couple times as a running back, and your cuts aren't as good, and you can't get open as a wide receiver. But in wrestling, it's a little bit different. Like you're physically getting beat up, you're really getting humbled in the room. So I think you got to be disciplined, you got to be humble, and you just got to have a high work drive, like a high work ethic. It's not a lazy sport. And unfortunately, the sport being so tough, sometimes people can't relay that to the professional world. And that's kind of I wouldn't say the downfall, because there's a lot of great wrestlers that became great business people or great professionals. But there's some that are really, really good wrestlers and have trouble making that connection.
Can't translate it to success after sports. That's part of the Players NIL too, is this post-career guidance concept. How do we take care of these people that have committed so much and focused, and what's their self-value and what's their self-worth going forward? So you've used athletics, you get to college, you've got a great mentor, you're in college, you're wrestling. I don't really care about the wins and the losses. Tell me about the experiences and the learning lessons and what you gained in terms of life skills by competing in college.
Competing in college, it taught me, how to manage my time, and it taught me discipline to another level. When I was an athlete in undergrad, I wasn't just an athlete. I was an athlete, a full-time student, a residential assistant, a student ambassador, and I was in a couple of different clubs. I still worked in the athletic department myself. I started off in the sports information department, videoing the games, running the broadcast, moved into operations a little bit, moved into social media for my specific team. So we had a men's and a women's team. I did social media for both of them, coordinated a little bit, just a very tiny bit, not much, but enough to get some experience, some promotional ideas. My first stab at negotiating a deal for our team when it came to t-shirts. It was very small again, but, I got in the behind the scenes of creating our first ever alumni duel. So a lot of these things showed me how to manage my time, but it also gave me the confidence to say I can actually do this at the next level. Like some of the things that I believe athletics and should teach people, and that athletes should have. Like, these are ideas that need to be heard, and things that need to be done. So I got a lot of confidence in my professional abilities, being able to do a lot more than just wrestle. But being a wrestler is what got people to start to believe in me a little bit. So it's kind of like my credibility, because they knew how hard I could work. But once I was able to get past that and people see me as a professional, now it's a little bit better to say I was a wrestler and now this is what I do in athletics, so that's pretty cool.
Wow. I mean, your mentors, your family, they must be proud. You give me goosebumps just thinking about it. It's the ultimate American dream. You're living it, my man. And congratulations on all of that. So, that there's a finality to all athletes, in your case, probably the end of your athletic career was coinciding with the end of your undergraduate academic career. Tell me the thought process about what was next. You're in grad school now. You're getting a master's degree, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So tell me about that process and why you're studying what you are currently involved in.
So I have the goal of one day being an athletic director. The ultimate goal is in the Power Five, but being an athletic director itself, I'd still be able to, accomplish my mission of being able to protect and empower student athletes. But kind of how it worked was, after I graduated, I worked with TD Ameritrade for a little bit, and it was cool. I got to work from home. I got to experience that life. Was watching the stocks every morning, so that kind of got repetitive. But eventually, I just told myself, like, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to sit behind a desk. So I applied for a job at a summer camp in Pennsylvania as an athletic director, and they offered me the assistant athletic director. Got that position, and so I lived in Pennsylvania for 2 months, and I was called by a lady that I met that runs a lot of things in Division II wrestling. And her name is Jackie Paquette, and Dr. Jackie Paquette. And Dr. Jackie Paquette asked me to come to the University of Indianapolis, be a graduate assistant, and help me out a lot with getting into school and getting me this position. And so that's kind of how I got here. But again, that came from wrestling. That came from being a stand-up person in wrestling. Things that I was doing, I didn't know people were watching. So as an athlete, you never know who's watching. You never know who can see you. For me, it was someone at the University of Indianapolis, but for you, it could be someone at the company you end up working for. So continue to be yourself, and just be conscious of, that people are looking at you.
Again, great stuff. So what are you studying now?
I'm studying strategic leadership and design. So we kind of look at problems and figure out how to come up with a strategy to fix them. Right now, we're going over conflict management. So that's kind of cool. We get to go over some conflicts, and I bring up sports every single time.
I think the world needs some conflict management education. So that's great. And you're going to graduate when? Soon?
I graduate next August. So not this coming August, but the August after that. So
August of 23. So you got a little bit more. You got some more coursework.
Yes, sir.
More studying. So you have some time to evaluate your options.
Yes, sir.
But I know you want to be an athletic director in a Power 5 school. That's great. But what's the first step? What are you hoping for in your first opportunity?
My first step is I want to take some time and be an entrepreneur. So I don't know how that looks. I've flirted with the idea of trying to start my own sports agency, but that comes with people having a little bit more credibility than just being an ex-athlete. So I have to find some ways to establish that credibility. I've also flirted with the idea of working for some companies and trying to negotiate different negotiations with them and become partners with them, so then I can build myself passive income. So I'm just trying to figure out the best way to really bring a record of being able to raise a lot of money and work my way into the development office of a Division I school, and then from there, work my way up. So right now it's just trying to figure out that lay of the land.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be successful. You've got all the characteristics. You're smart, you're disciplined, you're humble, you're social. In other words, you're a good communicator. So here's your chance to give back to Charles McNealy, sophomore in high school, right? What advice would Charles McNealy, MBA candidate, give to, a small town athlete, sophomore, not sure what his future holds? Give me some words of wisdom and some nuggets that we can share with our audience.
It's a very cliche saying, but it's very true. Trust the process. You know, the things that people are telling you, just trust them. If you really believe and you really believe in yourself, anything's possible. There's a lot of people who told me that I wouldn't get here. A lot of people that told me I wouldn't not only wrestle at the next level, but eventually go beyond that and get a master's degree. And so for me to defy the odds and continue to believe in myself, with the help of my parents and my family, my coaches, you guys have that support system as an athlete. There's a lot of people that care about you, believe in them and let them believe in you, but also believe in yourself, and you can go anywhere.
Awesome. Well, Charles, you've been an amazing guest, and I love your story. I can't wait to follow you. And maybe someday the Players NIL will create opportunities for you to give back, and I'd love to work with you.
That'd be great. That would be an honor.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Have a great day.
Thank you.